Hey guys, I'd like to welcome you all to Startup Grind Ottawa. Thank you so much for coming. Can we all give a big round of applause to April Dunford from Tulip.io. So just to recap, April's been with now 6 startups, but 4 of those 6 have had acquisitions. And you've done acquisitions for IBM. You've always been in a kind of a sales marketing kind of position, and so that's what we're really going to explore tonight. I'm going to hold your questions to the end. We're going to do about 45 minutes to an hour Q&A, and then we'll have the rest of the time to have some Q&A with April. Awesome. So thanks again so much for coming up.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for coming.
So I'm going to start off with just a few basic introductory questions, just to kind of get to know let the room get to know you. So where are you originally from?
I'm originally from a really small town in southern Ontario, Havelock, Ontario. You might have heard of it. You might have got gas there once. Highway 7. It's got a Max Milk. But I went to school at University of Waterloo and did systems design engineering. And then after I finished that, I'm going to give you the whole story.
Yeah,
so after I finished that, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kind of lucked into a job at a startup because I had a friend working at a startup, and they hired me as what they call a technical evangelist. And at that time, that was very common because we were selling databases, and so it was a technical product selling to a technical audience, and so you would hire these kind of engineering, computer science folks to go in and do product demos and trade shows and talk about, SQL and why our inner join was better than somebody else's inner join. So, and that's how and that was in the marketing department. And then a little while later, my boss quit, and I kind of inherited the whole marketing department. And then we got acquired by this company, Sybase. It was kind of a 2-step acquisition. We got acquired by a company, and then that company immediately got acquired by Sybase. And then my budget went from like $10,000 a year to $2 million a year, and it was one of those acquisitions where everything works out great. They kind of left us alone. Our product was growing really fast. And so basically I went from having this little marketing department and 2 salespeople to having this big marketing department, a global sales force, and $2 million, and it was just awesome. And so that's how I kind of ended up in marketing. And then I just kind of never looked back after that one. So.
Awesome. So that was right out of school, you said?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like I had that $2 million. The funny thing about that is, I think that's the biggest marketing budget I've ever had, and that was like my 2nd year of working out of school or something. My budget's never been that big again. Even working at IBM and whatever, I never had budget that big. But yeah, so that was pretty early on.
Awesome. And is there anyone in your family that's entrepreneurial, or how did you kind of get dragged into that
Yeah,
career
well,
path?
My dad runs a business. Yeah. So actually, my whole family they're run businesses, small businesses. My dad runs the most amazing business ever. It's he sells toys for tourists. Like that's what you do when you live in a small town. That's what the cool guy does anyway. So he sells like boats and ATVs and motorcycles, and it's an awesome thing to have your dad sell that stuff.
So as a consultant and as someone who comes on, when the company thinks that they might have product market fit, or sometimes they do, how do you evaluate that idea as like knowing that it's a valuable business, sink your effort and time into? What do you look for?
Well, so customers are really the way you figure that out. And so most of the companies, like the first few companies I joined, I was an idiot and I don't know. I just, went in, I looked at the thing, I kind of looked a bit at the traction, I looked at the team, and then I would try to decide, does this thing look like it's going to fly or not? Now I don't do that. Like now I spend a bunch of time with existing customers, because that's the only way you can really tell, right? Like, are the customers super excited, or are the customers like, yeah, what about that thing? It's okay, and that's a sign that you don't really have anything, right? Because a great salesperson can go in and sell anybody stuff they don't really need or want or have to have. But how you know you've got product market fit is when there is a segment of people that, I'll die if I don't have this thing. I'm so excited to have this thing. And the attributes of those people, there's a lot of people that have those same attributes, right? So whatever it is about them or their situation that makes them really excited about your thing, I could say, oh, if that guy's like that, and he's like that because of X, Y, Z, how many more companies look like have that X, Y, Z? And if I can look out and say, gee, there's like 1,000 companies have that. Well, I could sell that, right? And so if I get that in my head, like, I could sell that, then it's just a matter of execution, and then we can figure it out, right? The worst problem is when you get in and it's like, you know, again, the hero salesperson has gone in and sold a couple of them, or, you know, the founders have got their friends and aunts and uncles and everybody else to buy some, and there's this kind of fake traction, right? So it looks like you've got some traction, but, you know, when you talk to the people, they say, yeah, you know, it's okay, you know, and John's a nice guy, right? That's kind of a sign that you might have a hard time selling that, or maybe it's not there, or you'll get this one where you go in and there's some customers that are really excited about it, but nobody's really sure why, right? Like, we're not really sure why that customer is so excited, and there's something there, but we haven't quite unearthed it. Therefore, I don't know, are there 1,000 people like that, or 10? And if I just have 10, then that's not a business. And so that's, you know, so I think now I do a better job of assessing that. Like Tulip, I'm at Tulip. I spent 2 days a week with Tulip for 3 months, and Ali, the founder, and I just basically went on the plane and went around and talked to a bunch of big retailers, which is our target market.
So, yeah, sorry, I was going to say, what does it do exactly?
And pitch them different things. So Tulip's a really neat one. So I'll give you like the 10-second background on the company because it's weird. So the founder is Ali Asaria. He was the founder of Well.ca, which you may or may not know. So Well.ca is kind of a big company now, a few hundred employees. They're based in Guelph. They're the largest retailer in Canada online for bath, baby, beauty. Bath, baby, beauty. I think I've got that right. Health products. No, health, baby, beauty. That's it. And he's been running that for 5 or 6 years, venture-backed startup, very successful. And he decided about a year ago that in the process of building that business, he had written a lot of software. So he wrote his own e-commerce system, his own warehouse management system, his own order management system, and a team of developers in there doing that. And so he kind of woke up one morning and said, you know what, I should figure out how to take that technology and build a tech company to sell that to other people. And that would actually be beneficial to Well, too, because then it would take all that expense out of the business. So he replaced himself as CEO, negotiated a thing with his investors, pulled some of the IP out and the team, and formed Tulip. And so shortly after that is when he and I started talking, and we've known each other for years, me and him. And so where we started was a bunch of technology, but kind of not a product or an offering. And so then he and I did this exercise where we went around and talked to a whole bunch of retailers, and Ali being a guy who's been in the retail space for a while, we didn't have a hard time getting meetings. So, you know, we did meetings with maybe a couple dozen retailers, and we're talking to guys like Target and Macy's and the Bay and people, and we were kind of going in like, you know, we got all this stuff, you know, and what would you like to buy? Like, they're really dumb meetings at the beginning, right? Because we didn't really know, like, we kind of suspected I can't sell an e-commerce system. There's 1,000 e-commerce systems. I'm going to be out there selling against Oracle. That's dumb, right? But there's got to be something that these guys are trying to solve, that we have all this tech that we could turn into a product. And the result of all those meetings was that all of these big retailers that have a lot of physical stores, they've spent a lot of time working on their e-commerce stuff. And it's this completely separate silo from what's happening in the store. And everyone is now kind of looking back at the store and saying, like, how do we prevent Amazon from eating our lunch, right? And the only real differentiator we have is we have physical stores with people in there, right? And they're looking at what Apple's doing, and they're saying, those guys have physical stores, and they're packed. And people go in there, and they sell tons of stuff in the physical stores. And they're an example of a company that could have just gone online and skipped the physical thing altogether. So there must be value in having a physical store, but we're not getting the value out of it that we should. And so we kind of went back and said, all right, we have this ability to, you know, we understand e-commerce. We understand the back-end systems in a physical store. And we came up with this idea for essentially a platform for sales associates that allows the sales associates to deliver really amazing customer service because they have access to all the information about you as a customer, past purchases. If you built a wish list online, they can access that. If you have profile information or preferences, they can see that. And then all this deep information about products, right? So there's a barcode scanner on an iPad mini. I scan the barcode on the product and I can see here's the dimensions, here's a bunch of information about that product, here's the inventory for that product, like, oh, I don't have it in this store, but I have it in the store up the street, you can get it there. I can bring in online reviews of that product, I can show press mentions of that product. And so all of a sudden, coming into the store gives you this, you know, you have an interaction with a sales associate that can actually teach you some stuff and help you buy something. And so that's what we're doing right now. That's what the Tulip Retail platform is all about. This is still really early days, and so we're just deploying with Toys R Us right now, which is our first big customer, which is pretty exciting. But
what's awesome is, so I saw that, you know, you guys started officially, I don't know, that was the date on Crunchbase, April 1st, 2013, and then a few months later raised $2.4 million as a seed round.
Yeah.
But what caught my attention was that two of your investors in particular, one of them was Matt Mullenweg, the founder of WordPress, and the other one was a Waterloo guy named Mike McCauley, who did BufferBox for I don't know how long, but then all of a sudden they got scooped up by Google.
Right.
And so they popped out as investors. So I know how were you involved with that at all? And
yeah,
why those guys?
Yeah, a little bit. That was more Ali than me because I was still not officially on board at that point. But so the seed round, I think Ali did a really smart thing on the seed round, and because he's been through this before, in that he raised his seed round thinking about the A round, and so that he's going to have to do at some point. And so his investors the guys that you mentioned are more sort of personal friends of his that wrote some checks. The rest of the investors are, the biggest investor we have is Softtech, which big seed fund in the Valley, the biggest one in the Valley, really smart guys, really super connected. Charles Hudson sits on our board, he's an awesome VC. And he's a guy that can really help make an A round happen for you. And then we've got some folks in New York, Lear Ventures, Box Group, Founder Collective. They've all got really good connections in retail and also quite helpful when we do go to raise an A round at some point. These are good people to have that have been in the company, understand the company, the team, what we're doing, the mission, all that stuff. And so it was a big seed round for sure. But because we're an enterprise play, like we're essentially trying to close these big elephant deals, it's going to take us a while to show some traction on that because you can't close a deal like Toys R Us in a week, right? It takes months.
And so you said earlier that you usually, as a specialist, you usually come in between the seed round in preparation for the A round.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you can give or speak to in terms of what should you do for a seed round to kind of have a foundation, and what are you looking for when you really want to do the A round? So obviously the play here with Ali as well.
Right. So the big one for us is really thinking about a repeatable sales and marketing process. It's the same thing, except in this case, I get to lay it out at the beginning when there's nothing there. And so I think there's kind of a handful of things that are really important. First of all, the story's got to work, and it has to really work for customers, like to the point where you pitch it to customers and customers are super excited. But then the story also has to work for investors, which sucks because that shouldn't matter, but it does. And so you have to have a story that that customers get really excited about, but I have to have a version of that story. It's not necessarily the exact same story, but a version of that story that if I tell it to an investor can get behind it and say, shit, that's like a massive opportunity. And if you could do that, we're all going to get filthy rich. So we spent a long time, so that's sort of like stage one, crafting the story. Like, how do you tell it? What is it? What do you because like literally we started with a bunch of stuff that looked nothing like that story I'm just telling you now, right? Like it was literally like, we got e-commerce, we got warehouse, we got robots that go pick and pack in the warehouse. You want some of those? No? Okay, how about this other thing? Like, now we're not talking about the robots, but we have that. If somebody came along, we probably wouldn't sell it to them now. But so you got to have that story, and then you've got to be able to show, here's what I know about customers, right? And so in this case, I'm saying I've got an offering for big retailers with a lot of stores. And then the next question is, well, what kind of big retailers? Every big retailer? And the stupid answer to that question would be yes, right? The smart answer to that question is no, not every retailer, right? Because not every retailer cares about sales associates. Like Walmart, right, would like all their sales associates to go away and have everybody do nothing but self-serve. A higher end retailer doesn't want that. Like Toys R Us, for example, is our first customer. If all they sold was Lego, they would never buy our stuff, right? But they make a ton of money off baby products is one thing. And so if you've just had a baby and you got to buy a car seat, you know nothing about car seats because you've never bought one of those before. And you're going online and seeing all this conflicting advice. And if you get it wrong, the baby's going to die and you're all stressed out. And so you come into the Toys R Us and you're like, I'm trying not to kill my baby and I don't know how to put this thing in or whatever. And you want to talk to somebody who's going to give you some confidence that you're not messing this up, right? And then the other thing, you know what Toys R Us sells a ton of? They sell these... they have a seasonal section. You probably never notice it in the Toys R Us. It's like terrible, but it's like a bunch of pictures of stuff that's too big for them to set up in the store. And so it's like swing sets and backyard climbers, and these things are like $2,000. They make tons of money on this, but they can't even set one up in the store, right? So you're looking at it online, and you're like, I don't know, like, am I going to spend $2,000 on this thing online and push the buy button? I don't know, right? I need to talk to somebody about this, right? So you come in, and what do you get? Same thing. It's the same picture. It's stuck on the wall. And so you're like, I'm going to drop $2,000 on a swing set that I can't even walk around and touch, right? And there I am in the store, right? Wouldn't it be great if I talked to the sales associate could show me a video where it's set up and someone's walking around? Or if I said, is that thing hard to put together? And somebody say, not bad, let me show you the instructions, right? They're here, right? So a bunch of stuff that, again, give you the confidence to slap down your $2,000 and actually buy that sucker.
Cool.
I don't know how I got on that train of thought, but yeah, that's kind of, that's what we're talking about. So yeah, so not all products, not all retailers, right? Like if you're running a dollar store, you don't care about any of that stuff, right? But if I'm selling sporting goods, I do. If I'm selling furniture, I do. If I'm selling baby stuff, I do. And so all I've got to do is make the case that my low-hanging fruit segment of who I'm going after cares a lot about this, right? And it's not everybody, but in these situations, I go in and I say, I can offer that value, and retailers say, ooh, we could sell a lot more if we did that.
And so, speaking of selling and aligning your story with the customer interest and what they're looking for in the car ride over, we were talking about marketing and sales coming together.
Yeah.
And that startups need to do that. So is that something that you guys are super interested in doing for your clients, like to be able to not only do the marketing for your product, make the sale, but also help them sell?
Yeah. Well, for us, that is the metric. Like for the retailers we're selling to. The only metric they really care about is lift on revenue, right? They don't care about a lot of other things, right? And so I could try and convince them that, customers will be happier and happy customers are a good thing. But I mean, like, if I can't measure that, then it's a pretty weak value proposition. And if I say, hey, I want you to spend $1 million on something that might kind of make people sort of happy, like it just, whereas if I say, like for our customers, what we do is we say, we'll do a test deployment in a store, and we'll deploy one module of our solution, so just product information, nothing else, not customer information, not any of the other fancy stuff we do, just product information. Give me 2 stores, and we'll run a test. People getting served with, associate with the tablet and product information versus people getting served with somebody who doesn't have any information, old school style. And when we did that test at Toys R Us, we showed a 30% lift on revenue, which for retailers is like an eye-popping number, right? And so, so that got us, phase 1 product information rolled out across Toys R Us Canada. And then we immediately went into a discussion about, well, we've already done all the hard work to integrate product information, inventory information, store stuff. I've got access to your e-commerce system. I've got access to your store systems. How hard would it be to turn on customer information? How hard would it be to turn on, oh, I don't have the red stroller in stock, but look, I can order for you from the warehouse. Why don't I swipe your card and have it sent to your house? Which is essentially e-commerce transaction from inside the store. Why wouldn't I turn that on, right? And so the next thing you know, I'm inside the retailer, I know what's going on, and our thing's all modular, and all I gotta do is start turning things on, right? So I can get started really fast and easy, And then the idea is to spread horizontally across stores and then add additional functionality as you go along. So that's our sales model, which for enterprise is the only way you're going to get it done, because otherwise I go in and I say, I have this big kahuna mambo jumbo thing. It costs $2 billion, and would you please just write me a check right now? And everybody, I could still get everyone excited about that, but it'd take me 2 years to close a deal, and we'll be out of business by then. So instead now I've got, I'm just going to sell you this tiny little wee thing, and I can show that it provides lift in a real way, a real measurable way that impacts your business. And then once I'm in, then I'm going to spread around, and that's where I'm really going to make the money.
That's really interesting, because we were also talking about how, as a startup, if you can't measure it, you might as well not even be doing it.
Yeah. So then if I turn it around on the startup side, this is the thing I have a strong opinion about. So, so when I started, because I've been doing this a long time, most startups had, and a lot of startups still do, but back then everybody did. They had a clear division between marketing and sales. So there's a marketing function, there's a sales function, and those two things were completely separate. And in fact, if you rolled the clock back 10 years ago, marketing was really a sales support function, particularly if you were selling B2B. So if you were selling to businesses, marketing was there to support what the salespeople were doing. Now, if you fast forward it, I think everybody's grokked the idea that marketing is an important thing that needs to get done and can drive a bunch of different metrics. But there's still a lot of startups that have a marketing function that's doing a bunch of stuff that isn't necessarily tied into a sales function. And so they've got salespeople out, on the phones doing things, and they've got marketing people doing all kinds of stuff. And the two things aren't really connected. And in fact, I've spent a bunch of years consulting before I started at Tulip, and so I had a chance to look at like dozens of companies, and it's surprising to me how common that is, even in a really modern SaaS startup. And like I could name a bunch, but they would be embarrassed, so I won't. But successful companies, they've done big rounds, and you go in and you look, and they've got these big marketing teams blogging their hearts out and doing all this stuff on social media and creating content like crazy. And then you go to the sales team, and the sales team's like, I have no idea what they do over there. Like, I don't know what they do. Like, yeah, sometimes we get a lead, they're kind of shit. We usually don't follow them up. Otherwise, we're just over here dialing for dollars, and and that's where all the money happens. And these guys over here, you're like, wow, this is wasted resource. And so I think if you were to do it now, right, you would basically, there would be no division between sales and marketing. It's the same thing. Like from a customer's perspective, it's the same thing, right? So if I'm a customer and I'm interested in your stuff, right? Like I start by looking at your website and consuming your content and reading up on you, or reading your PR stuff, or reading about you somewhere. And then I do some investigation about you. And then maybe I interact with some marketing thing, like I talk to you at a trade show, or I attend your webinar, or whatever. Watch some of your videos, so I'm consuming your marketing, and then at some point I get into a process with you where I'm going to buy something. And as far as I'm concerned as a customer, that's all you, the company, right? There shouldn't be one department that's handling you when I'm just kicking tires and learning about you, and another department that handles you now that I'm ready to part with my money. And so in a perfect world, that would all be one thing, right? And I think we're seeing more of that, right? And then in an even more perfect world, when you get into customer success, after I've bought, you're still the same company, right? So I shouldn't all of a sudden get thrown over to customer support now, and there's this other group of people that I've never talked to, and that's a whole different experience. Like ideally, there's a customer experience, and it flows across the whole lifetime of the customer. And so if I think about that from an organizational perspective, if I'm a little wee company with 30 people, should one person be worried about that whole flow? Yes, right? Not 3 people that don't necessarily even talk to each other, yeah. Which is what you see a lot right now at startups, is they got one person running marketing and somebody running sales and somebody running support, and those 3 people don't even necessarily hang out.
So on that same subject, or like it's less probably applicable to the enterprise, but on the B2C side, what do you think about the whole growth hacking thing? Is that kind of what you're talking about, like merge everything together, sales and marketing?
Yeah, sort of. I don't know. I don't understand growth hacking. I don't know. I like, there's so, when the term first came out, growth hacking, I was like, I was like, oh, I like this, because I think I might be a growth hacker. And so maybe that's what I'm going to start calling myself, because it kind of sucks to call yourself marketing, because everybody's like, marketing, you suck. So so I thought, good, man, I'm going to be a growth hacker and get some respect. And so, Sean Ellis, he's an awesome guy. And you know, and I'm reading his stuff on it, and I'm like, I like this growth hacking thing, right? This idea that, you know, I'm focused on growth once I get to the right time, which I think a lot of people forget in the growth hacking thing, but once I get to the right time to put my foot on the gas on growth, right, I'm going to be thinking about, you know, sustainable ways to do that growth, and some of those are going to be automated and things I can program, and I need to be able to get my fingers into code. Some of those are going to be attributes of the product itself, which I really believe in. And so, you know, and I have like an engineering background too, right? So I'm kind of like, I like that stuff, right? And I've done stuff like that in my career as well. But then I felt like at some point the growth hacking thing lost the plot, where everybody stopped talking about revenue, and that's where I lost interest. So there was this idea that it was only for B2C, and it was only for juicing your numbers, and it really didn't matter if there was money flew out the back. And that's where I thought, no, that's crazy, right? Because you run the risk of getting into this unsustainable growth, right? Or this sort of growth which is just, I'm going to juice my numbers, whatever that number is. And there are some B2C startups, you know, like WhatsApp or Wattpad, I think is a good example of this, where they don't have a business model yet. And so all I want is active users, and I don't really care about where the money flows out. But those are so rare, so rare, right? The rest of us have to worry about revenue at some point. And so I don't want just growth, right? I don't want just growth. I want profitable growth. And so sometimes I feel like the growth hacking people have kind of lost the profit part of that. And so everyone's so focused on little tactical things that you know, like I did this little thing on Craigslist or whatever, and you ask the question, like, did any of those people stick, right? And did they convert to something paying after that? And I don't know. So some of that stuff I found, some of the growth hacking stuff I read, I find a little frustrating, because I feel like it's, you know, tips and tricks to juice a metric, where I'm questioning, is that the right metric to juice? And so, and I think a smart CEO, you should be asking those questions, right? Like, you know,
what's it actually contributing?
Yeah,
where is
like
that going? Yeah.
Right, and but again, I'm B2B, right? My whole background's B2B, and so I've never been in a company where, you know, we're essentially nonprofit, right? We can essentially say money, doesn't matter. We don't ever have to worry about money, and customers don't pay us, so don't worry about it. And so that, I just can't get my little head around that one, right? Because my whole career has been about worrying about unprofitable customers. Like at B2B, unprofitable customers will kill you, right? Because they take the same amount of resources in customer support. They take the same amount of time and effort, you know, to close a deal, but you don't make any money off them, right? And so you have to be very careful in B2B to not just onboard a whole bunch of customers that, yeah, I've got customers. I can say I've got 50 customers. I'm not making any money off of any of them, so they're pointless. And so sometimes I feel like these growth hacking guys are a bit like that. Like, I can hack this number so that it looks kind of good, right? It's like the way we used to think about traffic numbers, right, on websites. Like, ooh, look at my traffic, right? But who cares, right? Who cares? If there isn't money flowing out the end somewhere, who cares? So I don't know. So I worry sometimes about the growth hacking thing, that they're just focused on the wrong. Like, I think it's awesome. Like, again, there's lots of things about it I like, but some of it I'm a bit skeptical that.
Are there any good tactics that you've seen really work that also drive revenue and that sustainable kind of growth, or is it really hit or miss?
Well, so here's the thing, that all good marketing starts from the same place, right? And the place is really understanding who your low-hanging fruit segment is, right? Like, who are the people that right now, at the stage you're at and the stage your market's at, who are the people that are easiest for you to close, and they're going to be good customers after you close them, right? And so you really want to think about how many of those are there, what are their attributes, and what's the easiest way to get to them, right? as opposed to, you know, again, a lot of the growth hacking thing is just like, how do I get as many people as possible? I don't care who they are, right? I'm going to peanut butter the world with my whatever and get those people. And so I think good marketing is actually very targeted because it's very efficient, right? So I say, you know, how do I go after folks that look like this, right? And so, you know, in my experience, there'll be things that work, but they're always really temporary, right? Like they work because of a confluence of things happening right now. Like there was a period where, you know, a really great content email campaign was like the best thing you could do. Mm-hmm. Like if you had rockstar content, a targeted email list, there was nothing better than that.
Or PR, TechCrunch.
Stuff out. Yeah, TechCrunch for a while. Well, never TechCrunch actually. That's an example of juicing the wrong metric, right? Like, so everyone will feel good, your mom will read it and be happy, you know, it's like your server will crash because there's so much traffic, and you'll get a whole bunch of signups and nobody will ever even do the second step of your authentication thing. Like, it's that stuff, I don't know. Like my stories of great tactics that have worked where you guys would all laugh, right? Like some of the stuff that I've done that's been super profitable has been really old school because we've gotten really focused on something. So I worked at this company where we were trying to sell investment banks, right? It's kind of not going to growth hack my way into Merrill Lynch, right? so I'm selling investment banks. My average deal size is like $500,000. These are big deals, right? But I know exactly who I'm going after, right? Like I got a list of 25 banks, and all I got to do is get a meeting with these guys. And we know that if we get a meeting, I can get something happening most of the time, right? And so, you know, we tried doing events, we tried doing PR and getting stuff in the Wall Street Journal because they read that. We tried going to these finance organizations. None of this resulted in any leads, right? We tried email stuff, we did content, we did loads and loads of PR that got picked up all over and made us feel really good, no leads. And so we did this thing, and it's so like, this is the stuff that works for me. And like, you guys will laugh, like, oh, listen to the granny tell her old stories. But this actually worked. So again, I had these 25 guys, and I got a sales rep, and he's not getting any meetings, and no one will talk to us because we're a 30-person company in Canada, and we're trying to sell to Merrill Lynch. And so we did this thing where, so we got a meeting with Goldman Sachs. And so I went with the sales rep on the sales call. So we're in the meeting with Goldman Sachs, and this is the guy, and he's in charge of investment banking sales, who is our target market. And I'm sitting there in his office, and I'm like, oh, investment bankers are weird. Like, look at his office. His office is weird. Like, his office is full of all this stuff. So investment bankers are really into, like, vulgar displays of wealth, right? So he's got like a scale model of a car on his desk, right? And so I say, hey, nice car, because it's obviously there for me to say that, right? So I'm like, hey, nice car. He's like, yeah, I got the same cars down the parking lot. Bought it last week. There's only 12 of them in the United States. Blah blah blah. And then he's talking about his thing for like 20 minutes. And so so I was like, oh, we got to find a way, like, our marketing should tap into that, right? Like, so there's this thing about, like, how do I tap into that, right? So again, it's kind of crawling inside of the head of my target market. So I went to this company that built these fancy remote control cars, and they had this special edition remote control car thing, and the thing cost $2,000, right? It's this expensive. And so I said, well, I want to buy like 10 of these things. It's going to cost me $20,000. This is kind of expensive. Mm-hmm. But shit, going to a trade show was going to cost me $20,000, right? So we did this. We did a mailer, and we basically packaged up the car. We sent it to these guys, and we didn't give them the controller. And we basically said, hi, we do this thing. We had just closed a deal, so we had a hook, right? So we said, we just closed a deal with Goldman Sachs. We'd love to talk to you about what we're doing at Goldman Sachs. And oh, by the way, if you take the meeting with us, we'll bring the remote. And so we sent 20. We got 18 meetings. By far my best tactic, right? By far my best tactic. 18 meetings, 2 deals, and both those deals over $2 million. So, you know, if I look at that, you know, versus I could have like trade showed my brains out in Google AdWords, and I don't even know, like, hacking, whatever. But I mean, again, like, so the best tactics I've ever done have come from, I got to get into the heads of these people, and then I got to think about what motivates them, and you know, what can sort of get these guys jazzed. And I knew this Goldman Sachs thing, you know, on its own, the Goldman Sachs thing might have got me a meeting or two, right? But with the car thing, it was just enough to get these guys to go, yeah, all right, get in here with your car controller thing, whatever. And they were all like that. Like, they all laughed about it, but they all wanted that controller. Like, no one let the guy go without the controller. So it was a $2,000 thing. It was splashy. It was like, but it was worthless without the other piece, right? So it was like we sent them. And then we did a similar one at another company I was at where, again, it was like, most of the stuff I've done has been, that's really worked well in terms of that if you drew the line down to the end of revenue, has been kind of old school.
But
which is, you know, disappointing thing for people to hear, right? Everybody wants to hear that there's this trick, right? Like I did this little thing on Facebook and got 9 million people, and I'm like, I've never driven a deal like that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've driven deals like that, and they're okay, right? But the ones that are really amazing are like, you know, we came up with some neat concept. We did something outrageous. We got everyone's attention.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was people whose attention was hard to get.
But the other thing too with growth hacks is I think the more often that the same thing gets repeated, the less effect it has, right?
Well,
Like
that's
Salesforce
exactly it. That's
used to do those
exactly
crazy
it.
PR campaigns.
Right. So that's the other thing. And that's true in marketing across the board, right? What worked for you 4 or 5 years ago. Like events is a great example. Like there was the glory days of events in sort of, you know, 10 years ago where you could go to trade shows and buyers of software would actually show up and you would have conversations and get leads at a trade show. And then none of those people, all those people stopped coming to trade shows, and then you went to a trade show, there was nothing but junior people that were just there to drink free booze or something, and so then all of a sudden trade shows were crap, and everybody stopped doing trade shows. Now we're having this kind of renaissance in trade shows where there's these really, really focused shows that senior people will show up to because they're small. They're really targeted, and the caliber of speaker is really high, and the networking opportunity for a C-level person is quite high. And so those are actually good events now, whereas, you know, again, there was a long period there where I wouldn't touch a trade show with a 10-foot pole. Now, you know, occasionally there's a show that's pretty good. Like for retailing, right, there's this big retail show that happens that's outrageous in New York that I would never exhibit at that show ever in a million years. It's so huge. I don't know how anybody would ever see you, and it would be so expensive to do it. But there's some of these really small ones that I've been to that I think would be great shows for us to do because they're really small. There's senior level people there. The caliber of speakers is really high. It's expensive for the people to go. It's expensive for you to go too. But again, and then hosting those events. And, you know, at one point we all did seminars, and then we did webinars, and the webinars stopped working, and then we didn't do any of our own hosted events. We all went to pure content. And now some companies I talk to are back to doing online events again, and online events are working, or doing their own events where they're focused on a particular thing and they bring a speaker in. So the stuff changes, right? Like email is interesting, right? Like at one point email was amazing, and then email was not so amazing, and now I think email is one of the best things you can do, digital-wise, right? Like email with good content, like thoughtfully crafted email with an amazing subject line, a good content hook, a well-vetted email list is still one of the best things you can do, right? Drip campaign stuff works really good. You know, and things like AdWords. There was a period where AdWords was my best tactic because AdWords were cheap, and you didn't have a lot of competition for keywords, and the conversion rates were high. And then we all learned to ignore AdWords, and the competition got really high, and so it simultaneously got more and more expensive and less effective. And now I can't do anything on AdWords; it's garbage. I can't do anything on AdWords, and I'm sure that'll change at some point. You know, where it'll swing back the other way. Exactly. But you know, and then people tell me the same thing about Facebook ads. Although I personally have never had any success with Facebook ads, but I have talked to people that did. There was this period, and that it worked for about a year, and then same thing happened there. There was, you know, the bottom fell out, and then it was no good, and everybody had to switch to something else. But that's why you always have to be trying a bunch of stuff, right? And seeing what works, what doesn't work, right?
And measuring to know when it's not working.
Yeah, and measuring and watching it all the time, and not just assuming that, yeah, this worked last year, so this is going to work again. Like stuff that worked great, you know, just sometimes it just all of a sudden it'll stop working, and you'll be like, oh, too bad. Throwing that out.
So
got to do something else now.
Stepping out of the growth hack kind of thing, I want to shift a little bit to get your insights on acquisitions. So you obviously been with 4 companies that were acquired.
Yeah.
You worked for IBM for a while doing some
Yeah,
minor
where
deals,
we
some bigger
acquired-
deals where
yeah,
you acquired.
we acquired a bunch of people, yeah.
What's it like being on both sides?
Oh, this is really interesting. This is one of my best experiences, actually, because I had been at 3 companies that had been acquired, and then I got this job at IBM, not through an acquisition, but I got hired into IBM, and we were launching this new thing, and we got approval to do some acquisitions. And so it was so shocking to me the way IBM evaluates an acquisition, and I gotta believe it's not that different from other companies. But knowing what I know now, I think we were such idiots when we were sitting on the other side. Like, stuff we thought that was important, IBM was like, none of that is important. Like, I'll give you an example. IBM, you wouldn't know this unless you worked at IBM, but IBM essentially makes like all their money off of big named accounts. How many big named accounts do you think IBM has? Less than 100. It's hardly any. Less than 100 accounts. And they do whatever that is, billions and billions of dollars. And so in the business case for doing an acquisition, it has nothing to do with your clients. And occasionally they will do a manquisition kind of thing where, you know, we need some skills and we have to get those. And so those deals do happen. And that'll be to specifically fill a gap in the portfolio. But more often, when they're doing sort of mid-sized deals, they're looking to fill something with them. So they'll look at basically share of wallet. So I'll say, I've got these 100 accounts, and if I look at like Merrill Lynch, I'm getting, you know, X% of their wallet, right? Of all the money they spend on tech, I get this much. And then they look and say, well, where are they spending money that we don't have an offering? And they'll say, oh, this is it. And then they'll say, okay, who has an offering in there that we should buy? And then they'll look at all the offerings out there, and then they'll try and figure out, well, what's the right price point? And sometimes they'll buy a company that's really small, because it doesn't matter how many customers you have, because your customers, if it's not their 100 customers, who cares? Like, all those customers are going to go away. Like, so they're just all they're caring about is, have you demonstrated that you could sell into an account that looks like an IBM named account? And then if we put your product on the truck, could we sell it to the other 100 accounts?
Yeah. And increase that share of wallet.
Right, and just increase that share of wallet. And so you'll see companies would come in and pitch us, right, that we'd be trying to acquire, and they'd be like, we have 1,000 customers, right? And like, you know, your 1,000 customers, like, it doesn't worth, it's not worth anything to us, right? We're like, your 1,000 customers, you know. I'll give you an example. When I was at IBM, I was launching a new product, and one of my beta customers, I had a friend of mine was the CIO at Nike, and so I got him to be a beta customer, thinking he'd be a good beta customer for this thing, and so we went through beta, and we got to the end, and I had to sell him something, and it was about $1 million deal. And so I'm calling around IBM, I'm like, who's the account rep on Nike? Because I need the account rep to go in and literally put the paper in front of the guy to sign it. And I call around, I can't find the account rep. And I'm like, I can't figure out who sells to Nike at IBM. And then I find out Nike is considered a small, medium business account. And the rep is the small, medium business rep, and he handles 25 other accounts. And one of those accounts is the government of California. And so this guy is like, I don't have time for your puny little Nike deal. Sorry. And so I couldn't, like, I literally couldn't get the deal. It was so frustrating. And so, you know, so people are coming and they're saying, we have big accounts like Nike. And you're like, man, they don't have a big account. And so things that, so what matters more when you're trying to sell to IBM or you're trying to sell your company to IBM is how does it fit in their portfolio, and could they go into an existing account that has all the other IBM stuff and sell your thing next, right? And sell it probably at a grossly inflated price with a bunch of professional services and hardware and other stuff attached to it.
Pretty much the same concept in B2C as well. I mean, like,
yeah, like it's not like your traction is not all that
important.
Important for a big company, right? Like when you do these mergers with mid-sized companies, sometimes they are trying to do a share grab and get into a new market. That's not what these big guys are doing at all.
So is there anything that you should as a smaller company, specifically look at?
Well, you know where all our deals went sideways? All our deals went sideways on bad management of open source IP. So we had maybe 7 startups that we looked at and tried to acquire that didn't make it through technical due diligence. So essentially the way they were using open source made their whole thing open source, and we couldn't own the IP, and so that was that. And so you have to be really careful with that.
Do you think I've heard some people say that you should always be willing to sell. Is that the case? Is that kind of your opinion, or should you not sell sometimes?
I don't know. Like you gotta decide. I think you have to decide what you want to do. Like, you know what? Like some of the companies that I've been at, we've been acquired, and it's been a little heartbreaking. And some of the companies, we got acquired, and you sort of look back at it and you say, man, that was lucky, right? Like I worked for a company that was in the customer relationship management space, CRM software. This one we were selling to investment banks, and we got acquired at the peak of the bubble for just an insane valuation. And literally 2 months after we got acquired, the bottom fell out, and nobody bought CRM software for 6 years after that. Like, we would have been in really big trouble had we not. And as it stood, we got acquired for this $1.5 billion, and everybody was happy, and for a little bit, anyways.
Worked out well.
But yeah, so it worked out well for some people, not for me. But it it worked out well for the founder. And for the company, I think it was probably the right time and the right thing to do. But at the time, people had mixed feelings about it, because we were on a really big growth trajectory. Things were really hot. I like the idea of allowing some of these companies to get bigger. And, sometimes I worry that, especially for first-time founders, because I've worked for a few, that, there's a check dangling, right? And so, how do you say no to that versus taking your chances on what happens when so much is out of your control, right? Stuff happens in the market, stuff happens with your competitors, things go sideways that you don't have any control over, and sometimes somebody comes along with an offer that you think, yeah, you should just do that. But for me personally, I'd like to see more of these companies get big. But I don't know. But that said, I also, sometimes I kind of feel like any exit's a good exit, right? The worst thing that can happen is your company turns into a limper. And there's a lot of those, right, where they've got this sort of trajectory, they get to a certain point, and then the market shifts, things shift, and they kind of lose product market fit is essentially what happens. And then things get really flat, and then it's hard to restart. And so as a consultant, I've worked with a bunch of those. It's really hard to restart something that's grown, it's profitable, but it's limping. And to restart the growth in that is really hard because it requires everybody to sort of step back and reevaluate all their assumptions and say and sort of admit we no longer have product market fit in this market anymore. And so we have to kind of go back to first principles and figure that out. That's hard.
Do you think there's any markets or technology spaces that are about to be really hot? Like, what are you very excited about? Is it mobile or?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm more excited about I don't get that excited about consumer tech because I don't get consumer tech. I met the Thalmic guys when they were just starting, the Thalmic Labs guys with the armband. That thing is like magic. It's so cool. But is that a business? I don't know if that's a business. I mean, I assume that's a big business, right? Everybody's assuming that's a big business, but I don't know. I'm more interested in, I think right now is an amazing time to be selling enterprise tech. I'm amazed that you don't see more cool enterprise tech because the incumbents in enterprise are just terrible. Like, the technology that's being used in big companies right now is awful. It's awful. It's 15 years old. Everyone hates it. Everyone wants off of it. It's at end of life. Companies like SAP, Oracle, IBM, HP, that stuff is just awful. And I think we are at a period now with, SaaS technology in particular, that a startup can go in and displace some of those things. You got to be smart about it, right? And you really got to have your sales and marketing motion locked down, right? How do I crack an account? How do I get a deal done so that it doesn't take you a year to get it done? But I do think there's real opportunity there. And I've seen some companies like, you know, Workday and others, you know, I think we're going to have this kind of renaissance where the enterprise stack is going to completely change. Like what we think of as enterprise software 5 years from now is going to look totally different. And that's a good thing because enterprise software is terrible. It's the worst stuff you've seen. If you saw what people are suffering through in any department, almost, except marketing, where all the tech is brand new. And I think the marketing automation guys have proven that you can come in and sell against IBM and SAP and all these big guys. Like if you look at Eloqua and Marketo, those guys have done an amazing job. They're cracking big accounts and making a ton of money doing it. Going into a line of business that's underserved by the traditional enterprise players. And I think there's opportunity like that across the board. Like I think there's opportunity like that in HR, in accounting, in everywhere. And so, you know, it depresses me a little bit because I don't see, there isn't as much focus on, there's been a lot of really successful enterprise startup exits, but they don't get a lot of, they're not noisy, right? Because they tend to be not noisy in general, right? There's no point of me making a lot of noise if all I'm doing is trying to sell to an investment bank. You don't need to know about that. And so when I do my big crazy exit, you don't know about it. But I think if entrepreneurs knew more about how much money is happening right now in enterprise, I think more people would be focused on it. But instead, I think, you know, we get distracted by these really noisy
shiny
B2C things that we all know because we all use them and they're excited and people want to work on startups like that. But for me personally, I think there's huge opportunity in enterprise right now. Retail is another one. Like if you saw the crap those people are using in retail, like it's just awful. It's like green screens and stuff. Like you just think anyone could come in here and do a better job than what's in here, right? But you got to do it smart, right? You can't go in and say, rip out everything you've got and come to utopia. You can do that for a small company, right? But if you're going to change what Macy's is doing, what Target is doing, you got to start small. You got to go in and say, okay, don't rip it all out. It's fine. You know, just start with this little thing, and then you got to spread around like a virus, right? But I think there's big money there, and these people write big checks. There's, you know, you don't need millions of customers. You need a handful of good ones. Like, so anyways, that I think is exciting for me. But, you know, I look at all this other, you know, I like all this consumer tech. I have lots of it. But I don't want to work at those companies because I don't know how those companies make money. For enterprise companies, I know how those companies make money.
What's the biggest lesson that you've taken out of that, you know, your experience in your consulting? What's the biggest lesson that you've seen, or things that people do wrong all the time?
Things people do wrong all the time. A lot of the companies I talk to try to do sales and marketing without ever talking to any customers. And that, I think, is a really big mistake. And sometimes, you know, if you're in the mid-market, like you're selling to smaller companies, eventually, yes, you will get to this point where things are automatic and you can sell a lot of these guys without actually talking to them. But at the beginning, I don't think you can, because you'll never understand why your customer is doing something. And so I've seen, again, it kind of fits with this growth hacking thing, where people will do this crazy stuff like trying to survey customers and do all these things to track where people are going on their site and collect all this data to try and infer what's going on in customers' heads, when in fact you could just pick up the phone and talk to 20 customers and figure it out in a day. And I'm not sure why people don't do it. Part of it is because people have this idea, particularly if they're B2C, that, oh, I would have to talk to thousands of customers and this would be such a big job that I would never get to it. But anyone that's ever actually done customer discovery, it's amazing how few you need to talk to start seeing the patterns, and how smart you get. Like 20 phone calls with customers and you're so smart, right? As opposed to 1,000 surveys with maybe the right questions, maybe not, you know, tracking people going around sites, trying to guess what's going on in people's heads. It's so hard. And then you actually sit down and talk to them and you're like, oh, there's all this other stuff going on that you couldn't have predicted, so you never would have designed a survey to capture that, because you wouldn't have been thought they asked those questions. And so I think lots of customer interaction, particularly in the early days of a company, even if even if you're selling something that eventually is going to be a zero-touch sales model, is really, really valuable because you'll learn so much. I would say that is the biggest mistake. And that along with thinking that everyone's your customer, right? Like this sort of refusal to segment and say, everyone might be my customer someday, but right now, not everyone's going to jump on this bandwagon. And only people that look like this are really ready to go right now. So how do I just focus on them and get those people to jump? And then I'll worry about the rest of the world after I get them. So I'm going to get those guys, and then I'm going to get these guys, and I'm going to get these guys, and build it out from there.
I think I've monopolized the questions long enough. Do you guys have anything for April? A question, comment? Yes.
Sure. Can you tell us about customer discovery? Like,
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
It is.
Like,
It is.
What do you ask them? Like, how do you get to that nugget of product market fit?
Right. And this is
What
like,
road you take?
yeah, so like, so if you read Steve Blank's book, like this is actually, in my opinion, like if I look at the whole lean startup movement and all of that stuff, all that stuff's good, it's okay. But that customer discovery stuff, like I remember when I read Steve Blank's 4 Steps to the Epiphany, I was like, oh, this is the most important thing I've ever read, right? And so it is worth going back to that book and reading that section like 100 times because it is so smart. So Steve Blank is called 4 Steps to the Epiphany. So I know Steve Blank, when he was a CEO, he ran a company that competed with a startup I was working at, and we used to hate him because he was beating us in the market, and his company was called Epiphany. And so then he wrote this book, 4 Steps to the Epiphany. He teaches entrepreneurship at Stanford or something.
Everywhere.
He's everywhere, yeah. And he's sort of the guy that, Eric Ries based most of his lean startup stuff on. But in there, he's got like this sort of genius, chapter and a half on customer discovery. But my experience with that, because I've done tons of customer discovery, is when you start, depending on how early you are, but when you start, you don't know the right questions to ask. And so what you're trying to do, and it's a bit of a skill to develop, is to get in with a customer and just get them talking. And the key is, the customers are not experts on solutions, right? You're the expert on solutions. You have to be the expert on, this is what's possible to build, and this is what we could do. But they are experts on problems. You know nothing about problems the way they know about problems, right? So what you want to get them talking about is problems, right, around your stuff. So if I go to Tulip, right, so Ellie and I go in and we got a bunch of stuff, but I don't even know how to pitch them this stuff yet, right? So we're basically going in and we would frame the discussion around a trend that we knew was hot, which was omni-channel, and all our stuff we could say related to omni-channel is a big thing in retail right now, right? So we'd say, tell us about omni-channel, right? What are you doing around omni-channel? What are your big challenges in omni-channel? And just get them talking, right? And in the middle of that, like after we did 3-4 of those meetings, there was the repeating pattern, which was e-commerce is fine. We're not worried about e-commerce. We're worried about stores, right? So all our omni-channel things are around how do we make sure we have a better omni-channel experience that relates to the store. So once we did a bunch of those meetings, then we said, okay, now we're starting to see stores is the thing. And then we're like, well, there's lots of different ways we could tackle that, right? We could tackle the self-serve thing. So how do we make it better for customers to come in and self-serve? Or we could tackle, there's lots of different things that go on in the store that we could tackle. We could tackle just point of sale, right? So then we go in, and so the next bunch of meetings we did, we went in and said, so mobile point of sale, how do you feel about that? And all the big guys are like, don't talk to me about mobile point of sale. It terrifies me. PCI compliance. You see that guy at Target? He got fired. I'm not doing that. Not touching any of that stuff. Right? So then we're like, okay, mobile point of sale might be a problem with the big guys, right? And then you'd start saying, well, and so, as we got probing, you could see there were some things that were like, like they want to do mobile point of sale, but they don't want to do that first, right? And they want to do, and so then the customer discovery interviews got more and more focused as we learned stuff. And so in the end, how many meetings did we do? Like 20, maybe? Probably not even that many, right? But we started with, I got a bunch of stuff, you guys might have some problems, I have no idea where those things intersect, to, we went from saying it's omni-channel, it's in-store, it's really sales associate related, and then within sales associates, I know point of sale is important, it might not be the place where I want to start, right? But so if I could get at product information and customer information, I can get everyone excited about that. And so by the time we get to the end of all those interviews, we're like pitching this thing that everybody's like, if you guys could build that, we'd be really interested. And then we're like, okay, all we got to do is make all this look like that thing that we've just kind of discovered. But you don't know, right? Like at the beginning. And the biggest mistake you can make in there is assuming that you know and try and ask them about product, right? So if we had to come in and said, so what would you like your e-commerce to look like, right? I think, that would have been a totally different discussion, and we never would have got to this other thing that we got to. The best experience I ever had was my first marketing job. I got given this really stupid task, which was we didn't have any customer references. And I got given a customer list of like 500 customers, and I was told I had to call every single one and ask them to be a customer reference. And so this was a horrifying task at the time. But I got really good at just like, hey, I'm calling from Wacom. How are you? Good. Okay. You using our stuff? Yeah. And then you can sort of tell they're excited, they're not excited, right? What do you use it for? Oh, that's interesting. Why do you do that? Oh, would you say that's the biggest value you get out of us? Oh, no? Would you say these things are? And just sort of getting people talking, and then the story comes out, right? And so now I think that's the most valuable thing you can do at the beginning point of any, like trying to figure out sales and marketing is, again, figuring out where the pain points are, figuring out, what would get people excited. But it's a bit of a skill to have this kind of open-ended conversation and to kind of bite your tongue and not pitch people stuff, right? The minute you start pitching, then the whole meeting's dead. Like for a customer discovery meeting, right? Like if you say, hey, I've got this thing, and what do you think? Like most people will say, yeah, that sounds good. Is the meeting over now? Because they're just trying to get you out of it, So the minute it turns into a pitch, nobody wants to talk to you. But if you're having a like therapy session, tell me your problems, right? Like I'm here to listen to your pain. Then that's different, and people do like to talk about what's frustrating them because they wish someone would come and solve these things, right? So if you can get the meeting and you set it up like that, like we're just learning, and our friend introduced us, and could you please spend half an hour and have this discussion? Most people are happy to do that as long as you're not going to try and pitch them something. If you try to pitch them something, then you just wreck the whole dynamic.
Is there another question on that? Yeah.
How do you transition that customer discovery meeting into a pitch?
Oh, you got to have a separate meeting. So what you do is you go in like Target. This is exactly what we did with Target, right? So we're having this conversation like, oh, what are you doing with this? What do you do with that? Whatever. And so so we get to the end of that, and we're sort of recapping it, right? We're saying what I'm hearing from you guys is, sales associate related stuff, and we think we're going to build something around that. We don't know exactly what it is, but can we come back and show you something like that when we've got it? And they'll say yes, because they want to be polite, right? And then you got to get the next meeting, which is the actual sales meeting, where you say, okay, purpose of this meeting is I'm going to show you something and get your feedback. That's a sales meeting, and everyone knows that's a sales meeting, right? And so it's okay, you pitch your brains out on that meeting, right? But you can't do it in the same meeting, that's the problem. Because the minute you turn it into a pitch, then everybody gets into defensive, I'm defending against the salesperson mode, right? Which is, they're trying to get you out of the office, or they're trying to tell you what you want to hear sometimes, or they just or they go the other way and they get really negative because they just don't, this was supposed to be a sales meeting and now you're trying to sell me something, right? So, and plus you don't want to pitch them until your pitch is great, right? You want your pitch to be great when you go in. You don't want to waste that meeting with something that's a little half-baked. So if you're still doing customer discovery, you're not really ready to pitch yet, probably.
Yeah, right here, Jason.
So April, what are your favorite apps to keep you productive?
My favorite apps to keep me productive? Oh, I don't know. Angry Birds. That's right.
That's old.
That's right. I have kids, and there's so much Minecraft in my house right now. It's like insane. Like my house is all Minecraft right now. Favorite apps that keep me productive. I'm doing a lot of traveling right now, and I die without TripIt. So that's kind of an essential one for me. We're using Slack in the company, and we're a small team, but we're across 2 offices, and I think we'd croak without Slack, like group messaging
So yeah, it's
stuff.
group messages, like we use HipChat, and like we're all in the same office, but we don't talk to each other. It's all HipChat.
I know, it's like we're in the same thing. We're in the Toronto office. We're in this 111 Richmond space, which is Omer's, and so there's 12 startups in this space, and so and everyone's like trying to be quiet. So we're in this big shared office, so we do the same thing. It's like, everybody want to go to lunch?
It's
Yeah,
the best.
okay.
We were talking about this the other day, and
We
I was
don't
like,
talk to each other at all.
I wish group messaging apps like that were just the way people communicated. Like I would
Right.
throw out my text messaging apps and just use
Right.
HipChat or Slack. I've heard good
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So that, I think, is kind of an essential one. And then I'm doing sales pitches. So, and we're generally doing those over Skype or GoToMeeting. I hate GoToMeeting, but so I wish someone would make something better than GoToMeeting, because it's really flaky. Like it drops us a lot. Lots of times people can't get on it. And we're doing demos off an iPad, so we're using this thing called Reflector that works. And again, sometimes it doesn't work if you're in the company's office and you're on their Wi-Fi, and so I got to switch to doing something off my phone and stuff, and so that's a pain. But I would kind of die with all that stuff, without all that stuff. And then otherwise, what else am I using productivity-wise? Not sure. Way too much email, like just way too much email. I wish someone would fix my email problem. And then everybody at the office is all complaining about what email client. Everybody's got a new email client, and everybody's trying. So I was trying to use that airmail thing. That drove me crazy. Because I'm like Gmail power user, right? So I have like multiple tags on everything, and so I'm like, I can only put one tag. No, and so like that thing, I can only put it in one folder. Are you kidding me? I need things in 100 folders. So so I'm actually just using straight Gmail. I use Gmail offline. I use Gmail all over the place, and then I'm on an Android phone, and I have all the Android stuff. But other than that, yeah, no. You have a productivity app that you're selling? No.
I'm always curious.
Just curious.
Productive app.
Rob, you still have a go?
For initial customer engagement, so when you get the first office at Toys R Us,
Yeah.
do you believe in free, what are essentially trials, or is it always paid?
Oh, this is a really good question. This is a big deal in B2B, right? So here's the thing. When I'm doing early customers in B2B, part of my early customer experience is essentially exercising the purchase process. So I've not actually sold something until I've run it through purchasing and legal. And a lot of people forget that, and they'll say, oh, we'll just give it away for free, whatever. But you just skipped half your buying process. And so you gotta charge them something. Like you gotta charge them enough that it activates the purchasing process. Otherwise, you don't know if you can sell the next one when you do have to do that. And so people that haven't sold B2B don't get that, right? So, if you're Toys R Us, you don't get to buy something until purchasing says it's okay, and legal says it's okay, and looks at the contracts and all that stuff. And so if I give it away for free, well, then I don't have to do those 2 steps. And so I gotta charge them something. Like, even if I'm doing, and I would say right now, we're really not trying to optimize for revenue. We're more trying to optimize for, I need to show that I can close a few big accounts. And so I'm perfectly willing to do things like I'm going to waive the first year license revenue. So if we don't make it past the trial, you don't have to pay for that. But we are doing integration and customization to do the trial, and I'm totally charging them for that. And I'm charging them enough that it triggers purchasing, and the legal guys have to look at my document. But it's important to do that, because if you don't, then not only are the people not really engaged, and you don't really know if you have commitment from them, but you haven't tested your whole sales process. And so, when I was working at Jana, we were selling to investment banks, that piece, purchasing legal, was 4.5 months of our sales cycle. And you would just skip that. And you would never know whether you could get through that or not if you didn't charge somebody. So you have to charge them something.
A follow-up question to that is, do you write in trial agreements that if it goes successful, this is what success looks like. Do you know what success looks like? Because I've been through this where you do the trial, and they go, and everybody looks at each other and they go, yeah, that was great. And it's like, okay, you're starting the process again.
Well, so ask me a year from now and I'll tell you whether or not this is the right decision. But I'm experimenting with this thing right now that right now I think it's genius, but 6 months from now I might say, you know what, that was a really bad idea. But so in these retailers, we don't know exactly what the lift on revenue is going to be. And the retailers don't necessarily care. And so I don't want to put a number on there that I don't know I can reach, right? So I would love to say success is a 10% lift in sales and have everybody be confident on that. But you know, there's things happening in the store I don't have control over and all the rest of that. So what I'm doing instead is I'm essentially doing the presumptive close, which is I make them sign the sales agreement up front that says, at the end of trial, this is what a per store deployment cost looks like. So we're all agreed on this is what it's going to cost to deploy it. And we all agree that at the end of the trial, we will move to deployment for this many stores. And so they're not committed, but it's kind of in the contract, right? So it's a little psychological trickery where I'm basically saying, we get to the end of the trial and it's right here, it's all written down that we're into the trial and then we're going to move into the thing, right? Unless we decide that we're not.
Yep.
But, and so.
Which I presume slows down your legal process because obviously it must mean a lot more negotiation with their legal teams.
So that's what I thought, right? So that was my worry about doing it. And I had no problem with the legal guys at Toys R Us. Now, maybe on the next one I do, which is why I don't know if this is going to work with everybody. But it was an experiment for that one because I thought I don't want to just put the thing in front of them and not say what the next step is because otherwise then I'm not, I'm breaking my sales flow. So I threw it in there just for fun, and it was like whoosh, right through, and I was like, oh, that's genius. If that works like that with everybody, I'm really happy. But does it? I don't know. So it could be that I just caught the legal guys on a happy day, and and whatever. And if I went to somebody, but it could be that I'm used to dealing with investment banks, where there's legal, it was insane. Maybe retailers, the legal is not so crazy. I don't know. But ask me that question in 6 months.
Good morning.
How often do you go to a store and observe? Like, do you have any hands-on assistance, or do you help them out when they're trying to use your product?
Yeah, this is a really big deal for us, right? Like, so even if, and again, it's part of this thing of why I think that you have marketing, sales, customer service, and it's all one thing. Because if it's not, then you're in trouble, right? So after we've closed the deal and we've deployed, then we move into this deployment phase, right? Where we're going to roll stuff out in stores. And part of that deployment is making sure the people in the stores are trained, that they understand how to use it, they understand the value of it. And so there's two things that I think we're really focused on. One is, we're working very hard on the product side to make it super, super brain dead easy to use the app, right? To the point where there's a lot of things you can do without even having to navigate in the app because you're just scanning the barcode and then you get what you want. Because we think that the harder it is for the sales associates to use it, the more likely it is they won't, and then the deployment will ultimately fail. The second thing we have is we're building a dashboard of basically stuff we can look at on the server so that we have a sort of early warning system that kind of says, store over here, nobody's used it in a day, what's going on? And then we have the ability to go to the store or get the store manager on the phone because we know all the store managers and say, hey, notice nothing's going on over there, is something broken, is there something we can help with? And then I think our training has to be phased. So I think we got to roll it out, we got to let everybody use it, then we got to let everybody come back a couple weeks later and say, this worked, this didn't work, this is confusing, I don't know how to do this. And so there really is, I think, sort of a customer success component on this, that we can't just throw the stuff out and expect the retailer to manage it because it's too risky for us, particularly on our first accounts. We need to learn what makes a good deployment as well. And so we're pretty focused on that right now since we're rolling out our first customer right now.
Brandon?
Yeah, referencing back to what Rob was talking about earlier, you mentioned it's really important to trigger the buying process, which I agree completely, especially if you're trying to land a $500,000 deal. Because, as you know, it pushes out timelines that create
worked at IBM. I had to use it. I was like corporate mandate. I was like, oh,
it's like the worst thing on the planet.
Worst thing ever. Like,
but with that in mind, how do you feel about startups that are doing things like, let's take Dropbox as an example, who go in and they specifically price at a level that a manager can write without actually the process on purpose to hook them, and then to eventually they're like, yeah, now you're going to go buy Dropbox corporate, or you're going to do this thing.
Right.
What do you think about startups that do that?
I love that model, right? So I think that model is awesome. I think that model is less proven than people think, right? So I've seen startups that have said they were going to use that model and then had to switch to old school enterprise, sell the big deal, because they just couldn't get any traction. And so I think there are certain kinds of apps where that's going to, lend itself to that kind of model. And I think if you could do that, that's awesome. But I've seen lots of ones where there was an assumption they could do that, where they were sort of giving it away for free, and then they thought they could send a salesperson in and sell the enterprise support agreement or something. And that's harder to do than you think, particularly for things that IT doesn't want in there in the first place, right? So
Prognos Insight story to the letter right now.
Right. And so, so I love the idea of that, right? But I'm seeing more success, like just thinking about the companies I work with as a consultant, because I got to look at a lot of companies trying to sell stuff to enterprises. I think what's easier is to sell to a department head and figure out what the department's head's budget level is, because there's usually a number, right? Like, I'll give you an example. On contract, I worked for this big Chinese company called Huawei for about 1.5 years, and I was a vice president. And as a vice president, my number was $250,000. So if it was less than $250,000 in a calendar year with a vendor, I could do that without triggering purchasing. So a vendor come to me and quote me 300 grand, I'd say, no, go back and make it 249, because then I could do it. And so I know little startups selling stuff that's like departmental, that you can go into the department and they'll say, look, I've got a budget and it's 20 grand. If it's over 20 grand, then you're going to trigger this other process. And then you go, oh, you just give me my price. Then I'm going to slide in under that. So I think those are very easier to do than to kind of do the individual and then whatever. But yeah, I like the idea of not doing the big, hairy enterprise deal right out of the gate, because there's all sorts of risk in that. Not the least of which is if you're selling in really big enterprise where you've got an incumbent vendor that might react to you being in the account, sometimes it's better to be quiet about it. Like, or to get in a way where it doesn't hit purchasing and it doesn't ring any bells, where somebody in purchasing or legal says, oh, well, we've got an enterprise license agreement with IBM and they have a thing like that. Why are you buying this thing when we could get it from IBM for free and it's covered under our support agreement, and blah, blah, blah. But, not all departments are like that. That's why IT's terrible department to sell to right now. Like, don't touch, it's the worst place to sell, right? Because IBM, HP, SAP, everybody, they have such a lock on IT right now in big accounts, even like large mid-size accounts. Like, you can't sell anything in there. But if I'm trying to sell to HR, marketing, legal, supply chain, there's all kinds of places where you can sell stuff that SAP would never know, IBM would never know, because they never talk to those people. They spend all their time with the CIO. And so if you can get in at a departmental level and then spread around like that, you can do it. But IT is terrible. I'll give you an example. At IBM, when I worked in the database division at IBM, and one of our competitors, we had a data warehouse solution we were selling, and it was crap. And one of the competitors to that was this data warehouse appliance by these guys in Netezza, which later on IBM went on to acquire. But before IBM acquired them, these Netezza guys would pop up in our accounts once in a while. And so we had one of our named accounts, so one of these very special accounts, the Netezza guys had gone in at a department level and sold one of these Netezza boxes. It was a little deal, like by IBM standards, tiny, like $250,000 or something, tiny, right? But word went, but then we found out from IT, or somebody was in and they were doing the walk around the data center or something and was like, what is that with the pink lights over there, that thing? And you know, so the Netezza boxes were really flashy. And so he went by and was like, what is that thing, what's that? And the word went around that Netezza had sold a deal in our named account. And the reaction to that inside IBM, you're taping all of this. My old boss from IBM is going to get me in trouble. But the reaction to that inside IBM was instructive, right? So what happened was we found out a little company had sold something right in our sandbox, like right in our thing, in an account that we owned. And the reaction to that was incredible, right? The general manager, it was a thing with the general manager. This guy runs a $7 billion business. He started a weekly call for that account. We were going to do a weekly call at 4 p.m. Friday afternoon, and it was full of vice presidents on what is the status of this account and review every single thing that was going on in this account. It went on for months. And the guy who was in charge of the account that was our rep for that got moved to like Luxembourg or something, and like, you know, like the whole thing, it was like all hands on deck, right, over this one little deal. Because it was right in their wheelhouse in a named account. And yet you contrast that with, you know, I'm trying to sell $1 million worth of stuff over at Nike and I can't even get the guy to show up, right? So, you know, I think there's lots of opportunity in these big accounts, but you can't go straight at them, right into IT. That would be like the worst thing to do. But, you know, again, Eloqua and Marketo have shown that I can go into that same account and sell all kinds of stuff to marketing and no one will notice.
Let me grab this one here, and then we'll last one with Greg.
So, as a robotics guy, I was interested in your comment about having some of this robotics take place.
Yeah.
And not to go forward with it. So, based on what you said,
well, we might use it at some point. Like never say never, right? But
I mean, I can guess based on what you said why you might not see that as being the best fit. But if you don't mind expanding on that.
well, so yeah, so this has been one of the most interesting things about this startup because it's so unique that way in that we have a whole bunch of really, really cool technology that we're not necessarily going to sell this year or next year or maybe ever. And so that's hard. And I know that's been like sort of a thing with the team, right? That we sort of had to narrow down on something. And focus is a really big thing for a startup, right? So if we had to come in and said, you know, we've got warehouse stuff and robots and an e-commerce system and an order management system. We're just not a big enough team to support products in all those markets. And so we had to kind of pick something. The problem with warehouse management is that is a very difficult sell. And even though we think our warehouse management stuff is excellent and better than most of what's on the market, it's a hard thing for me to prove. So we went in and tested that with the retailers and the conversations we had, right? And we're like, we have this warehouse management system that does pick and pack equal to Amazon, which is amazing, right? But they have got a warehouse management system already, and to put ours in would be a 1.5 to 2 year project, and they'd have to rip out everything they've got, and they've already spent a couple $1 million on that. And so, you know, and it's not a priority. Like everyone was saying, yeah, warehouse, it would be great to do that warehouse thing a little bit better, but we're so worried about what's happening in the store over here right now, we're not going to touch that this year, or next year, or maybe the year after.
So increase in revenue is easier to sell than reducing the labor costs.
In this particular case, it was, right? But it was mainly just people couldn't get their heads around the work that would have to, like the investment they'd have to make to rip out what they already have and replace it with this thing that, yes, it'll be better, but it just wasn't the piece of the business that was on fire right now. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of an important thing because when you're a startup, you're trying to get people to buy something from you and you're nothing, right? Like you're nothing. So it's not like I'm SAP. If I'm SAP, I go in and they're, oh, okay, maybe we'll do this thing with SAP. They think it's a good thing. But they're trying to buy from Tulip Retail. They never heard of us before. And, you know, we're a 20-person company in Canada. Like, why would anybody buy anything off us, right? Like, big company, right? And so you got to make it as easy for them as possible to say, well, buy this little thing, and it's not a lot of risk, and we'll just do a test, and if the test doesn't work, no biggie, you're only out this much money, and it's a little thing, and, you know, but if it does work, you know, there's upside and whatever, and, you know, so you got to kind of make it super easy for them. Like, you know, when I worked at Jana, where we were trying to sell these big $1 million, $2 million deals, like, you know, the due diligence on that was like a year to get a deal done, because, you know, who are we, this crummy 30-person company that nobody's ever heard of, and, you know, why would I write you a $2 million check when I could buy Tom Siebel's stuff, and everybody else runs his stuff, and he's a $2 billion company, and you guys are nothing. Like, that's the trick.
Correct.
The sad reality.
Using the TISA purchase by IBM, and knowing the reaction that the folks have inside IBM when a small firm ends up in a named account.
In the data center. That was the thing. Like, if it had showed up in the marketing department, who cares? We don't talk to those guys. But it was in the data center. Like, we own the data center. We are the data center. It's an IBM data center. And that pink thing was flashing in the corner. Like, people were like freaking out. You know, there was like.
As a strategy though for a startup to try to penetrate right into it. Now, assuming you've got runway, right? Because that is your challenge.
Yeah.
To get into that account, to get acquired.
To get acquired.
Right, to get acquired, or to be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not by IBM.
Right.
It's by IBM.
Well, so there is this thing, right? When we were looking at acquisitions, part of the due diligence was this question of, can I sell it into the named accounts, right? And if I could show it was in one of the named accounts already, then everybody'd say, well, obviously they could sell it in the named accounts. It was really hard to sell in when we're watching it. But it's hard, like, I couldn't grow a business that way, right? I wouldn't want that to be my first deal, let's put it that way. Like, I would sooner do 50 deals or 100 deals and then say, okay, now I'm thinking maybe, you know, if we were to say, oh, maybe we want to get acquired by IBM, well, one way to do that at that point would be, let's try and get one deal happening. But man, I wouldn't want to build my business on that, because that is hard selling in there, and you'll never expand in the account. They will freak out until you are tramped out of there. But that said, I can sell into all kinds of departments all around them, and they probably wouldn't notice until they went to do due diligence on an acquisition, and then they'd be happy you're in there, right?
So higher multiple than on the what you pay for them as a result of it being in that account.
It would just be, it's a hurdle to get over, right? It's a thing. There's always going to be that question, right? Like, can I, if I give this to my sales reps, can they sell it into the accounts we already have relationships with? And so if some deals have happened that look like that already, then the answer is just yep, right? So it's just a big thing off the checklist that you say yep. But I mean, the other way to do it is to sell into the accounts that are just below there, right? So if I did a bunch of Nike-sized accounts, you say, okay, it's not a named account, but it's on my SMB list, right? That might get you there too. But, you know, it's a funny thing, because I've seen people try to do a relationship with IBM, you know, with an idea that that'll get us on a path to getting acquired. And I was in software group, and so that's the way software group does an acquisition. If you look at the professional services side, IGS, which is this whole other part of the business, the way those guys would do it is they would look at your solution and say, can I put a bunch of services around that and sell it with the offerings we already have? And so what those guys would try, they would try to do a couple of deals together and see if it worked. And then you would get over the hurdle and you'd go along. And so that would be different. So it kind of depends on the nature of the product as well. And then for other things, like, you know, some of the bigger acquisitions that I was involved in, it was, again, mainly just looking at, there's this segment of the business, right? Like, at that point, we didn't have an ETL tool. We were looking for an ETL tool. And there was two companies. There was Informatica and Essential. They were the only two in the space at the time. And they were both all over our accounts already. And that was fine, because we didn't have a competing offering. And, you know, and when we looked at that, then it just became a which one's easier to buy and which one makes the most sense with our thing. And in our case, Essential, we already had a relationship with the CEO there, and we knew a lot about their tech. But they had already sold into our accounts, but that was fine because we didn't have an offering in that particular space, unlike the Netezza example where we had an offering, it was crappy, but, you know, which is why they eventually acquired Netezza, I think, to fill that hole, but.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up there. I'd like to just give a round of applause to April. Just a few quick announcements. The first one, there's going to be an informal startup drinks right after this at Fat Boys. There's a few of us going over if you guys want to join us for a beer or 2 or 3. The next startup grind is June 18th. It's a Wednesday, I believe, or Thursday. And the speaker is Ali Zahid from Toronto. He just got out of Founder Fuel with Brandon right there. They're doing Van Hawks, so he's the COO there. Really smart guy. They ended up doing 6 times their $100,000 goal in like 30 hours or something insane. So he's going to come share his secrets of crowdfunding.
These are the guys with the bike.
These are the guys with the bike.
It's
Yeah, the Measurable smartphone bike and stuff. So you don't want to miss that. And there's 2 simultaneous things happening on June 6th. So Friday during the day, June 6th, at the Conference Center is Accelerate Ottawa. There's a special unpublished code that you're not allowed to reprint, but I'm allowed to share with you. It's called Fresh20. Please don't put it up on the internet, but if you want to get a ticket or if you don't have one, it'll save you 20%. So that's happening during the day, and then at night, at 11:25 Carleton, it's a kickoff to Startup Weekend number, I think it's 6. You guys were number 4, right? Tattoo Hero. So I would also like to thank Microsoft for the room, Brandon for helping with the check-in. If you have any questions about either Startup Weekend, Founder Fuel, talk to Brandon as well. And if you have any questions about doing anything at 11:25, the new entrepreneur in residence, Jason Daly, is sitting right there. You guys can talk to him about that. Thanks so much for coming out. You guys have been a very quiet and entertaining group. Thank you.